So I'm here with Justin Moaning of Central Insurance, somewhere out in the middle of Iowa, aren't you?
Yeah, right in the middle of the heartland, out in God's country here in Northwest Iowa.
Yeah, and he's out driving to go see a client. He just wrote a $50,000 revenue account, and they said they wanted to see him. So we're just doing this interview live from the truck.
You bet. On the road.
So tell us a little bit about you and your family, Justin.
So I am a single guy. My family is all in Northwest Iowa, Sioux Falls, South Dakota area. I'm born and raised in this area. I started out as a football coach, as a college football coach. And, like most people, didn't really, take the path of going into insurance as my lifelong dream. But it came about and happened. And it was actually the best thing that ever could have happened to me. And it's been a great and wonderful fit ever since. I came to Central Insurance about 6.5 years ago after my dad saw an ad in the paper looking for a sales representative for him. And sometimes you see those things and it's not the most attractive thing when your dad says, "Hey, have you seen this job? Have you looked at this?" And but it was a blessing in disguise that he saw that, and I looked at it, and the past 6.5 years working for Central Insurance and Central Bank has been nothing but wonderful.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how your job has kind of progressed, because you started out as a producer and now you're part of, you're one of what we call Bignition coaches.
I started with Central. I had done some benefits production prior to my time with Central. And when I came onto Central, I really had a move and a focus towards commercial P&C. And then, so a new focus, a new learning path, a new learning curve, and then trying to take in all the information that you have to have as an insurance agent to be able to provide value to your clients, and trying to learn new lingo and solve problems and be something that is going to make a difference for your clients. And that was overwhelming and difficult, and took just a ton of sweat equity, time of reading and dedication of learning into new concepts and policies. And through that time, really started to progress and really started to find ways in which I could show my difference to my clientele, and that I could have a value proposition in my meetings, and progressing that into then helping how I sell and how I learned to take the things that I put my sweat equity into and making them into key factors of making that decision-making process, kind of led me up to starting to be a sales leader within our organization and helping others try to leverage what they know and get that out in front of people.
Awesome. What was not working, if you want to think of it that way, at Central prior to kind of jumping in on the whole Bignition game with us? Any ideas there?
Yeah, I would say that it's really pointed in that we had a few producers, myself included, that did have detailed prospect pipelines, that did keep track of who they were contacting and where they were going and how their leads were working and what they were utilizing inside of those leads that were producing results to them. But it was very minimalistic, and it was all things that each producer spent their own time creating to help keep themselves organized and, dotting their I's, crossing their T's, and moving forward. And with the implementation of the iWin and Bignition system, we've been able to mass produce that detail to all of our producers. We've been able to give them a trusted and tried and true process in which that each producer can replicate. We can give them a workflow that helps them go about their day and helps them be more active. But with activity, my big thing is activity times effectiveness equals results. It's not just activity. We can't be nomads out here wandering around. And I think before the implementation of the Bignition system, a lot of our producers were just that. They were nomads. They didn't have a set path. And this has really given us a path to move towards success.
And has it affected closing ratios or top line revenue or size of accounts, any of those sorts of things?
We're starting to see a change in our closing ratios. We definitely saw a large uptick in our overall annual revenue this year for 2020, which at the beginning of the year, I think everybody, any business owner, operator of a business was really concerned about what that potential was. But through activity, through effectiveness, we saw an increase in that, and I attribute that highly to the Bignition sales system.
That's awesome. So out of everything we do here at Bignition, training, coaching calls, the tools, the systems, the technology, what's your favorite thing about Bignition and what we do?
I love the system, the videos inside the system, the training calls that happen and then are uploaded into the system. We all understand that as an insurance agent, like myself today, sometimes that client calls and we've got to go. And you always provide such great, relevant information for what's going on in the here and now. Looking back at 2020 and when COVID really hit us in the pandemic and everything started to shut down, you were right there to do some training sessions on cold calling. And how do we change the paradigm of what we are used to doing traditionally and move that forward so our business continues to have success? And it's that here and now, it's thinking about what's going to matter today and what's going to be impactful tomorrow that I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Do you feel like it's beneficial for you to hear other people's stories and how they've grown their agencies and benefited from stuff like this?
I think it's always beneficial to hear other people's stories. Even if you get one thing from another individual, if it's one thing that can positively impact the way that you go about business, the way that your business goes about business, you can make great rewards from that. So hearing from others, hearing what works, what hasn't worked. I'm a huge history guy. So why do we spend so much time as young children learning about history? It's so that we don't make the same mistakes that our ancestors have made in the past. And you can really get that from conversation with other producers, other agencies, and I value that.
Yeah. So what is the one thing you'd say to agency owners, sales leaders who are kind of considering this, but they're sitting on the fence, wondering if it's going to be successful for them? What would you say to them?
I would say that anytime that change is going to come, it's really scary. It's the unknown. How is everyone going to take to it? But without change, you're going to be stuck in the same rut that you're currently in. I know that when we changed and we were sitting on the fence and we were talking about this, there was a lot of pushback. But once you get into the system, once you understand what you want out of the system and how that can positively impact your agency, it's easy for the ownership, it's easy for the leadership to get all in and be excited about that. And then you've got to just look for your agents, your producers that want to get there too. And you'll find those people that can be champions of the effort that you're putting forward, and their success stories will bring along the success stories and bring along the implementation of that with the rest of your producers. So don't worry about the few, worry about the whole group. And this is going to impact the whole group for the positive.
Something I'm curious about, when you guys first started out, there was a bit of a hiccup. We had a guy in the role of sales leadership that, it wasn't a fit. And
Yep.
You came along and it was a fit. What do you see as kind of the distinctions or the difference, whether it's mindset or attitude or desires, that makes for somebody that has the ability to go drive this as a process?
I think it's discipline to a system. I think it's that you implement the system and you adhere to what that system is. And if if it's going to start at the top, and if you're going to do it and you're going to be a champion of it, then other people will follow. You know, not to toot my own horn, but I lead us in sales just about every year. So if I'm doing this and they see that my numbers, and I'm never afraid to change the screen so that my numbers show up on there, there's assimilation then, as opposed to someone who just gives it lip service and isn't actually being actionable and accountable to the system. I think that was maybe our biggest thing.
I'm curious how, you know, you're a football coach, right?
Yep.
Anybody who's been around me know that I'm a big fan of Nick Saban because he's a great winner. And he puts together teams, and he has a discipline on recruiting, has a discipline on how he develops people. And he feels that if he can develop people into champions, that they will win championships. And so his focus is on people. So tell me how you see this. How does this compare to what your football coaching career was like? What are the same and what are the differences, if you will?
I think the same is that either you have a fundamental foundational base that you have to have, and you have to see it, and you have to work on it every single day. So just because it's something that may not be the funnest thing to do, you've got to work on it every day. You've got to be a master of your craft, and those little things, some of those small efforts will continue to add up, be impactful every day. From that, the analytics side of the two are very, very similar. You know, it's all about effectiveness. It's all about efficiencies and how are you utilizing your time and what works and what doesn't. So if you're going to look at data, numbers typically don't lie. So when you can utilize that data to help it make better decisions about how you're spending your time and where you're focusing on and what's going to be impactful at the game day or on the day of the sale, the day of the presentation, those are the things that really align together. It also aligns, like you said, of managing people, because within a selling system like this, you know, every person is a little bit different. All people have their own comforts and how they go about and talk about things. Most people, some of our producers really struggle to see what difference they bring. They don't understand what differentiation really is and how they can do some of those things that really set themselves apart until it starts to come out of their mouth. And then it's pointed out that really is different. That's something that not everybody does. It's not typical. So those are some of the things that are really, really similar into it. And I don't find a whole lot of differences from the coaching aspect into the sales management and the sales aspect of it. It's about managing relationship. It's about managing data. It's about having an end goal and trying to put goals in place to get you there.
Thank you. And so I often use the deal about you need to have a really well-defined playbook. And you know, your X's and your O's, and, you know, if you're a wide receiver, you got to go down 10 yards, plant, and go 45 yards out. It's not like, hey, just go. And so the same thing I think is in selling. There's a lot of conceptual selling ideas: build relationships, ask probing questions, overcome relationships, and do stuff. I've always felt like the wedge was a lot more defined playbook. Therefore, it was much more actionable. Is there anything you have to say about that?
I would certainly say that. You know, I took a young producer just 2 weeks ago into an account that we took over on Agent of Record. And just with our service platform, understanding the wedges that I knew that were going to be true of this size of a client. I knew that their agent was 4 hours away. I knew what was probably occurring with them was more of a phone call conversation, and what they really, really needed from an opening prospecting conversation with them, and things that were going to be impactful to them. So I could take my wedges and I could then build a service timeline inside of the iWin system of proactive service in which we can complete and utilize that as a contract for service for them. Just describing what we do, why we do it, and how it's measured and how it's impactful to them for their business. I couldn't tell you in the last year how many times I've taken that document, that playbook, so to speak, out to a client, sat down with them, and talked about, this is our deliverable to you. This is what we are going to do on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis that is going to help manage your program and set you apart. And let them look at that and then tell them, but you can't keep that. You've got to be our client before that document gets to become your document as well. We'll sign it, you'll sign it, and that'll be a working agreement for the both of us on how we help manage this risk throughout the course of the year. And to see in a prospect's eyes when they look at that and they look at the detail and they look at something that they've never had anybody tell them what their agent really does for them before, it's impactful, and it's the buying decision, and you've got it right there.
Before Bignition, or maybe kind of contrast what was like before Bignition to try to do something like that, and then how long it takes you to do it now that you have the technology and it's all mapped out, just, as honestly as you can.
Yeah, so before Bignition, the level of detail was you went in and you built out something new for each customer. You took what you thought were going to be impactful things, and you tried to rob things that you've done in the past for client A. And then, so I also liked some of the stuff that I did for client B might be impactful for this. So you had to do a lot of research of things that you've done in the past and try to pull things together that met this particular need. Now with Bignition, it took a great deal of time initially on the setup of building in what our service deliverables are. And from that time, I think I spent a good 2 weeks of time really focusing in on what we do, why we do it, how it's measured, how we deliver that to our clients. But that 2 weeks of work now, in 15 minutes, I can have a presentation ready to go that are going to meet the needs of this client, be very detailed, be very presentable out to that client. And it just became much more efficient.
And when you say 15 minutes, you don't necessarily mean kind of 15 minutes. What you mean is drag and drop, 15 minutes, print it out, you're out the door. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. It is. I know exactly where I go. I know what my playbook says inside of there. I know through different categories of things that I want to be able to put in. I can see all of the different service deliverables that we have, and I can pick and choose. 15 minutes, I can put it together. I can have it printed off in color, bound into a nice presentation folder, and out the door and on their way to their office.
Now, that leads to more AORs, BORs, but then how do you manage those services once you get it sold? Can you talk about that at all? And how does Bignition help in that?
So previously when we did that, it all had to do with, okay, you've got to go in and you've got to then schedule this into your calendar, and you've got to put it into Outlook, and you've got to try to figure out either through Outlook or agency management system how we get reminders, and then who's responsible for that. Now with Bignition and building all of those in, once we move a client onto a BOR, an AOR, and we bring that client on, we can implement that inside of the system, and the system gives us daily reminders of when those services are due, who we are delivering those services to, who's responsible for completing that service, whether it be the producer or the service team member that's responsible for completing that. And it keeps that workflow and that communication flow really great between the agency. It allows us to understand and see what different people are doing, and the note factor inside of there allows us to be able to keep up to date with the different conversations that are happening within the group and with the client.
And then when you get to the end of the year after having done that and followed through those services, have you used what a lot of people refer to as a stewardship report, but have you used that at all to go back and validate, here's what we said we do, here's what we did, and continue to enhance the trust and improve, retention?
Without a doubt. And we've seen the utilization of that stewardship report really come into play where they understand what we're doing. There's a realization of our activity throughout the year. And we've utilized that stewardship report and that overall understanding of what we do for them on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to be really impactful for the increase in our red hot introductions. It helps that conversation of allowing us to build that relationship and build that trust with the current client, but it also helps us in the terms of building our external and our new business pipeline and more opportunities just from this small part of what we do.
All right. Well, let's you brought up red hot introductions. Any broker that's been out there working for a minimum of 3 or 4 years has built a stable of clients. We'll call it a book of business. $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $800,000 of revenue represented by specific clients, and each of those clients know people, and leveraging those relationships to get introduced in is what we call red hot introductions. Before Bignition, how did that work, and then how is it that you're working to get leverage off of that now?
Before Bignition, I would say that there was always the ask for a referral, and I think referral is a dirty word. When you go to a client and you talk about a referral, and the conversation used to be about asking them who they know. And with the utilization of red hot introduction and the Bignition system, it becomes more about who do we know that they know? Who do we want to meet that they know? What information can we have on that individual about how that relationship is? And then how can we set the table to help them talk about us and all things that we said before? And this is what our service platform is. This is what we've done from a stewardship standpoint. Remember where you were before you started doing business with us, and where we've moved to now, and how that's been impactful for you, and all of those things. So all of those things from a conversational standpoint have increased our producers' willingness and ability to have that conversation and start that talk. There's less uncomfortability there.
Which is powerful. That's an important word. There's less uncomfortability, which means that it's easier for them to do it.
Yes. And from a management standpoint, with the system, it is so much easier to track now. And you can see where their center of influences come from that red hot introduction. And so it's really, really exciting to see who's asking, where's that coming from? How does that link into our top 20% of accounts? How does that link into our middle 40% of accounts? What kind of accounts are those then linking us to? It's really great information for us to be able to dive deep into and help each producer help continue to build what that ideal prospect is for them.
All right. Thank you. I want to shift to a different subject. Goal setting is something that, we as salespeople, agencies, businesses, everybody's doing some sort of business plan, goal setting, that sort of stuff. Within Bignition, it's a little bit different process. Can you talk about that at all, and what parts of it you find most valuable or interesting?
Yeah, parts that I find most valuable is that goal setting in Bignition is very producer individually driven. But at the end of the day, it's also about the agency and what the agency is driving towards. So when a producer is able to look at how is this going to make them, how is this going to benefit them? How in 30 years, where do they want to be? And then an overall picture, I think, is one thing that I've always seen from people who set goals is things that people struggle with. They don't look in the long term. near enough. They look at what's immediate in front of them and they set a goal for that, and then they don't know where to go to next. And I really appreciate that it has a long-term view approach. What is the end game goal? And then can I amend that and I can change that? If I have a child, my end game goal changes in 30 years. My goals drastically change. The numbers are going to have to change. And then within that, then the system also allows you for an action plan. And that action plan can be broken down into a 3-year time period, a year time period, and what that activity needs to look like on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for you to be able to achieve those goals. So from a number standpoint, it gives real clarity on how that book is going to move, how it's going to impact, and what their income picture really is going to look like. The other factor that I love inside of Bignition is my action plan. And we utilize that with all of our producers so that they can put together their SMART goals so that they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're timely. And that how are they going to take the things that they do on a daily basis? How are they going to utilize the system? And how are they going to make those things impactful so that they can meet those numerical, those financial goals that they've laid out for themselves over that 30-year time period, over that 3-year, over this year currently, and put into place. And I love the fact that those are things that you can amend and change and update and move towards at any time inside of the system. And it time dates it. It talks about where you were, shows you where you were and what you're moving towards and how your goals are progressing. And I absolutely love that for all of our producers. I love it for myself every day.
And in the sales leader role, a lot of sales leaders are still agency owners, sales leaders, still kind of stuck in the spreadsheet world, and they're managing spreadsheets for what's in the pipeline, a spreadsheet for goals, a spreadsheet for competition, spreadsheets. I mean, a lot of spreadsheets everywhere. And, getting them updated is challenging, it seems to me. How has that part of it as a sales leader, when you go back to both efficiency and effectiveness, how has that made you more efficient, and how has that made you more effective as a sales leader to be able to have all that stuff in one place? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it used to be, you're exactly right. It was this spreadsheet and that spreadsheet, and then how do I compare and combine and pull data together? And now all of that information is set within one place. And then I can look at a variety of different reports on a weekly basis to determine what's important now. So what's impactful, what's changing in our landscape, what's going on inside of our own offices, what's going on in the market, all of those things to determine the different reports and different functions that I want to look at. I can look at that very quickly and a holistic view of all of our production team inside of the agency. I can look at it by specific departments now very, very quickly and make comparisons back and forth between the two. And then I can really dive deep into and look at individual producers and what that is. So to me, it's gained me a lot more ability and time to do other things than try to do an audit and a review of what our activity looks like. What is our progression? What is our efficiencies? And I'm able to focus on other things inside of the agency than trying to go through all of those different reports and try to track that information. So it's been hugely impactful for us in that manner.
Hey, man, that's awesome. Hey, dude, it looks like you might be where you're supposed to go. It was a great call. I appreciate it.
It was. Hey, you too, Randy. Thanks for all you do. Thank you to your staff. We certainly appreciate you guys. Can't say how much we appreciate you. So thank you. Be well, and we'll talk soon.